Hey there. The episode you're about to watch is filled with so many golden nuggets about communication. Robyn Smith is awesome. And here's the thing, the audio somehow got a little messed up. You can hear her great, me not so great, but it's clear enough for you to hear. You're going to love it. So just bear with us, and my apologies. Enjoy.
Hello, Soul Sister. Welcome to another episode of Midlife Love Out Loud. Are you living your life out loud? If not, let's work on that. That's what we're here for today, to get more tools so that you can expand and grow and open your heart and have extraordinary love, whether you have a partner or not. And today I have a dear friend of mine in the house, Robyn Smith. Hey, Robyn.
Hello.
Robyn and I have been dancing in business and love and friendship for years now. And Robyn is so amazing when it comes to communication. And communication, as you know, I'm always talking about how key communication is. And I was like, Robyn, we need to have you back. We need to get you back on this podcast and dive deeper and talk more about more of how important this modality. It's not even a modality. It's a way of being, and it's a tool that most people don't know how to use because we haven't been taught. So let me tell you a little bit about Robyn before we dive in. She is an award-winning speaker, a leading trauma and relationship coach for women and couples, and founder of the Rock Your Relationship movement. I love that. Yes, let's all rock our relationships. Inspired by her own thriving 20-plus year relationship with her husband. Oh my God, they're so yummy together. She's helping thousands of women transform from frustrated to fulfilled by creating deeper, loving, and conscious connections for greater life satisfaction and happiness. Exactly, right? This isn't just about partnership. This isn't just about having a good relationship. It is about having a deep relationship with everyone and everything, and it starts with us. So I'm so excited to have you here. Yay!
Thank you so much, Junie. It's such an honor to be here with you, and always a pleasure too.
So cool, so cool. And I've learned over and over and over, sadly sometimes painfully in the past, how important good communication is. So let's just start with what you see is possible when you have good communication in a relationship, and why is good communication oh my God, I can't speak today. Why is good communication important for your relationship?
Communication is a big word.
I'm trying to communicate. I'm not having a hard time communicating.
Yeah, and it's a funny that's such a long, tricky word. So thank you for having me, Junie. And I love this topic because it's really top of mind, like you said, for so many women who are having struggles in their relationships. They feel like if I could just communicate better, so many problems would be solved. And I think there's a lot of truth to that. So that's why I like to teach to that and really help people get some foundations for how to communicate skillfully, because the main thing we all want is to be seen and heard and understood. And it's just like a core need that we have as human beings. And so if we don't have the skills, like you said, I don't know anyone who was trained in healthy communication skills growing up. Most of us just are winging it until we realize there's actually some training we could get. So we need training, because we often have to unlearn bad habits that we were taught in our households or society. Excuse me. So you asked what's possible when you have good communication, and what I've experienced is, like I said, being heard, feeling understood. And for me, both of those are about connection. When I don't feel heard and understood, I feel like there's a disconnect, like you don't get me, you're not seeing me, you don't understand where I'm coming from. And there's distance in whatever relationship it is for you. And so when you get heard and understood, you're like, okay, now you get me. And we all want to be gotten. We want to be known on a deep level. And so communication can help us get there, communication skills. And I think what's also possible is just so much expansion. So from connection comes more play, more aliveness, more depth, more intimacy. So all those things, I think, and more are possible when you have really good communication online.
Oh my God, absolutely. And the word that just keeps popping out for me is connection. Because if we're not feeling heard, if we're not feeling understood, and so many women, that's like their biggest thing. He just didn't get me. He just wasn't listening. He just la, 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 la. And that's why relationships struggle so much, because it is a disconnection, and we so deeply want to have that heart to heart, that soul to soul, that intimacy into we see. And we don't know how to share what's going on inside of our hearts, inside of our beings, in a way that we can really be understood, then I'll speak for myself. It's like there's just this loss, there's this frustration of not being seen, not really being gotten, as you said, and that just hurts. It's like, oh my God, if I'm with somebody and they're important to me, and they're just not really able to hear me in a way that I feel seen, I feel like we're on another planet, and that's one of the biggest things people say in relationships. So,
Yeah.
the woman
It's
that
lonely.
oh, go ahead, yeah.
I was just going to say it's kind of lonely, right? Because we want to be met somewhere, and we're not being met, so we feel alone.
Yeah.
And exactly the opposite of what we're wanting or seeking when we're in an intimate relationship. Yeah.
Yeah, we don't want to feel alone, and that's why so many women are like, I really want to find a partner. I really want to have my other, and that's why I brought you on, because we can find that partner, we can find someone to date, but at the end of the day, if you don't have this in check, you're not going to be fulfilled. You're not going to be able to have that deep connection. So it starts from day one. How can you share in a way that you can have this deeper connection? I'm curious, what would you say are some of the biggest mistakes some of your clients make when it comes to healthy communication?
Well, I'm gonna bounce off of what you just were saying, because I love how you were framing it, that you need to know how to communicate, because so often women are saying, as you were giving an example, he doesn't hear me, or he's not, whatever he's doing. And so it's so easy to go, it's all over there in his problem.
Yeah, let's point the finger.
Yeah. So that's one. And so the key really is to learn the skills for yourself. So you start with you, right? Because no one else is, can change your life but you. And then, and someone is more likely to be able to meet you where you want to be met if you're showing up in that certain way, that opens you to make you available. So this is part of what I wanted to say to your question around, what are some of the communication pitfalls or mistakes that people make, is that they aren't present for the communication. So they're distracted, they're already overwhelmed with something, they're multitasking, whatever. So you can't really create a good connection without being present. So that's one. Another one is, well, part of that is the not listening, like I was just pointing to, that a lot of us don't know how to listen. We're in this fast-paced world. It's like, okay, what's next? And, hurry up. And I don't have time for this. And so we don't know how to slow down enough and open enough to just receive, because we're always like achieve, do success. And so that the opposite of that, some call it more of a feminine side of things, is to just receive and listen and take in. And that's such a huge part of healthy communication. So those are a couple, in addition to, as I was saying, the pointing the finger, the blaming and the criticism are two of the main problems that I see people making it someone else's fault, or blaming or criticizing yourself doesn't help either. So those are my
yeah. And when you say presence and just really being able to perceive what I see on a, mainstream kind of thing is people are listening, but also thinking of what they're going to say next.
Exactly.
They're listening and going, oh, I need to address what she just said, or what he just said. And as soon as we're trying to, like, oh, I got to respond to that, and you're still listening, you're doing two things at once, which means you're not being really present, and then you miss things and you're not having that deep connection. That certainly gets in the way. But to be fully present, we can really hear deeply.
Yeah. Not only the words, but the energetics, the emotions behind the words. So there's so much we could be listening for. If we would,
as we're talking, it's bringing up a memory. I remember many years ago when I was married, my husband was whatever he was doing. And I was sharing something, and he was not paying attention to me, but he was like, no, I'm paying attention. He was probably doing something on his computer. And I was like, all right, I'll just keep talking, and then afterward, I completely didn't feel heard. I completely didn't feel understood. And then he's like, I heard everything you said. You said this, and you said this, and you said this, but he was able to spit it back, but there was no real, like, dropping into. And in present relationships, and anybody for that matter, if friends, family, whatever, if someone's on the phone and I'm talking, and like, I'll be saying something and then they start to text or something, I will stop talking. And I will say something like, finish what you're doing. And then oh no, I'm listening. I'm like, I gotta be honest with you, that doesn't really work for me. I'd rather you finish what you're doing, because in the past, blah, blah, blah. So really just putting down and being so present, that is what creates such a deeper intimacy. And that's what we want, right? We want healthy connection, not half-assed connection, right?
Exactly. And Junie, I have the same story.
I think there's a bunch of us that have a few of those stories, right?
Yeah. And I've come to the same place. It's like, it's a boundary, right? So it's like, if I'm going to share something important, I'm going to wait until you're available.
Yeah.
We're going to talk about that a little more in a moment. So
sure. And we're talking about the importance of communication, and yet there are things that get in the way of healthy communication. I have my take on that. I'm curious what your take is on that. What are some of the ways people really mess this up? Why is this happening?
Yeah, I like to talk about the source of that. We've already talked about some of the mistakes, the pitfalls that people make, blaming, being distracted, and things like that. And not having the skills, right? Not being trained how to communicate well. So all that. And I think some of the deeper source of all this can be developmental and complex trauma. So early childhood trauma, situations that occurred, whether you were still in the womb, a birth trauma, post-birth, first 6 months of life, those early life traumas can actually contribute to your, if you have a style of withdrawing from communication, of feeling like, I'm just going to walk away, you just shut down, maybe you just go numb, you go silent, you can't think anymore. That might be the source of that early childhood trauma that causes you to not feel safe and to want to disconnect. And then there's lots of other types of trauma that many of us have experienced, whether it was a severe, intense thing like abuse or neglect, or something more subtle where mommy, couldn't breastfeed, or mommy had to go to the hospital for 10 days, or your parents were arguing a lot, or, but they didn't hurt you, but, we are affected by these things. So we may have a trauma that causes us to feel unworthy and not valued. If maybe another sibling needed more attention than you, or you're the middle child, you didn't get enough attention, or mommy was like, or your parents were workaholics, and so they didn't give you, or you always with a nanny, or whatever it was, you could feel like, I'm not worthy, I'm not important. And so the lenses that you wear in your communication style are sort of maybe diminutive, or like always trying to please, or, always looking out for somebody else's well-being, but not speaking up for your own needs. Like you and I were just talking about having the ability to have boundaries and needs. So those are a couple examples. And of course, if you were harmed, hurt by your caregivers, that's a huge blow to your sense of self and worth. And then, and you also may have a lot of anger. You would be likely to have a lot of anger from that kind of trauma and other types of trauma that might cause you to be more aggressive, more hurtful to people, more manipulative. Or you could have kinds of trauma that cause you to like want to please, or also and never say no, or kinds of trauma that cause you to always want to, and I was speaking to this a bit before, but to disregard your own needs and always look for others. So you put yourself last all the time because it's too threatening to, because you don't want to get rejected. So I could go on, but that's a sampling of how like your early trauma can really add up to, how you show up in the world, and how whether you feel safe, whether you feel empowered, valued, and all that affects how you show up in your intimate relationships and all of your relationships, I think, and with your work and with your body, so it's going to affect your communication, but especially if you were taught things like, crying's not okay, and big boys don't cry, and little girls shouldn't be angry. And if you were taught things about your emotions that made you feel like who you are and how you are is not okay, you're going to learn to suppress that and, keep that under wraps, and then not be fully authentic. So that's another example of how we might show up not fully capable and skillful in communication because of all that baggage that we're carrying around.
Absolutely. I mean, you nailed it, totally nailed it. I mean, as a shadow worker, that's what I'm always talking about, which is, why are you holding yourself back? What's the fear? What's underneath this reaction? What's underneath this resistance? Why is it so scary to speak up for yourself? And underneath it, it's like, well, when I was a kid and this happened and all the trauma and these experiences and all these things have laid down a foundation of what's safe and what's okay, how to be. And if you're that way, the shit can hit the fan, so you better not be that way. And so that is just, there's a lot. That's why you're so good at what you do, because you're helping people get to the core of why they're not communicating in an authentic way. There's just, if I do, then uh-oh. And that's, and I do similar work. It's just different roads to Rome. But at the end of the day, we're scared. We're scared that we're going to have the same trauma happen again. I don't want to feel inadequate. I don't want to feel left, fill in the blank. So I love everything you just said. I would love for you to give some tips. So we're talking a lot about communication. We're talking a lot about how to do it well and do it healthy. What are 3 key communication tips you can share with us today?
Well, I love this topic, Junie. Thanks again for having me. And the tip.
You better like the topic. This is your main thing.
It is. It's the doorway in for sure.
Yeah.
So I'm going to share 3 communication tips that are probably not what you might expect, and that's why I want to share them. And because I see them as foundational for setting the scene, if you will, the environment for healthy communication skills. So let's call this the foundation of the house, and then you're going to put your building blocks on the foundation, right? So, so these are the 3 that I think are super important. 1, good eye contact, which you and I are making as best we can, given we're on Zoom and the camera's up there and your face is down there and all that. But
if people only knew how hard it was for us to communicate. We're communicating, but we're not really looking at each other, but we sort of are.
sort of looks like we're looking at each other. Yeah. So good eye contact is key. And it's because that's how we feel seen, and that we really get someone's at least seeming to listen when we're making that connection. And like we were already talking about, when someone isn't looking at you, they're looking at their phone, they're on their computer, they're reading a magazine, they're like in the bathroom, whatever they're doing, we feel a disconnect. We feel we're not being met. So it's so basic and yet so easily forgotten, again, in our fast-paced culture where there's a million things to do right now. And why don't you just talk to me while I'm washing the dishes and it'll be fine. I'll listen to you, right? Like your story and I have a similar story. So all that said, you just do your best to make eye contact and to ask for eye contact, especially when you're going to say something important. If you're just saying, hey, make sure to pick up some chicken and, whatever, maybe it's not as important. But if you're like, this is important to me, I really want you to listen, then I would make that a boundary. I need to have eye contact and full attention, like we were talking about earlier, presence, in order to have this conversation with you.
Before we go to the next one, I've got to ask about that one.
Well, I have a part 2 to that.
Okay, go ahead.
This might answer your question. So the part 2 is not everybody is able to make good eye contact.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just want to get to when someone's like, I really want comfortable. I'm trying.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say that and just to name it, because some people feel insecure about that. They know it, that they do. And I'm going to say that's likely because of that earliest childhood trauma again. So I want you to just have some compassion for yourself if that's you right now, and eye contact is kind of scary for you. It feels too intense. It's too intimate. Don't force it. Just do your best and make a little and then look down or whatever you need to do. But the more you can acknowledge that with somebody who wants your eye contact, I think it will help. That you're aware of it and that you're doing your best, and it's scary. And then get help. Get help,
Right.
because probably that you do have early childhood trauma, and that can be addressed, and you can get more comfortable with eye contact without it seeming so threatening.
Beautiful.
So that's what I wanted to say. Okay.
Perfect. What
So
else?
number 2, this is in a similar vein. When you want to have that important conversation, make sure the other person's available. Don't catch them while they're driving or chopping with a big knife, or start talking to them. Ask for that time. Make it a point to say, hey, I have something important. I want to sit down with you. When are you available? So what you're doing is you're getting consent, and you're making sure that, and you're saying, I'm worthy of this time and your full attention, and I demand it. And this is how I want it to be. And so you're not just throwing out some stuff while someone's, again, otherwise occupied. And they could be otherwise occupied emotionally or mentally. They may look available, but if they've got a ton on their mind and they just had a shitty day at work and they're like overwhelmed or whatever, they're not going to be fully present. So you could ask, are you available? Are you emotionally available? When's a good time where we can sit down and you can be available to me? So that's what I would say is number 2. Get consent for full availability before you have your communication. So again, these are foundational to set the tone for you to have better communication.
Absolutely.
Number 3 is the reverse of number 2, is check in with yourself. Because sometimes we're so urgent, like I have to talk about this and it has to happen now. And we're still super activated energetically in our nervous system, or super angry about something. And we're just getting it out, and we're not taking the time to really think through what needs to be said, how I want to say it, what I want out of this. So those could be 3 more points, but check in with yourself. Am I available physically right now? Is my body able to stay here? Like, am I super hungry? Maybe I should get some food first or whatever. Am I available emotionally? And do I feel mentally capable of having this conversation? So all of those are going to, again, create a foundation for you to then take whatever communication skills you want to learn and implement them on top of that foundation.
So good. Yeah. whether you're the one that wants to have the conversation or the other person, it's a big thing in checking in and asking, is this a good time for me? I see so often, especially with women, they say yes often. You know,
Yeah.
we're trained to be the listeners, the nurturers, the givers. And so often people be like, yeah, sure. And then they're not really able to. And I always say, if you say no, I'm going to thank you. Thank you for
Yeah.
telling me this isn't a good time, because I'd rather you say yes when you really are able to be there. So knowing ourselves and knowing, is this, am I in a good place? Is my energy, or you know what, I would love to have a conversation with you, but I haven't, can we table this for, you know, a half hour? Can we revisit this in a half hour? And I wanted to say that one can think, well, those are so simple. Eye contact, you know, being able to be present, to be able to ask, you know, like looking at the time and going within all of that. And from across the board, it's really being aware of what's happening and the importance of your communication. So communication is so key, and knowing yourself is so important. That's why I always say, become your own soulmate. If you want to call it a soulmate, become your best communicator with yourself before you say, yes, I'm diving in with somebody else. So anything else you want to add to that?
Love it. Love everything you're saying. Love the ways our work is so parallel. And
Yeah,
no,
it's so
it's
cool.
true. I totally agree that, you know, the more we know ourselves, and of course, we've watched ourselves, you know, we're in midlife, you know, we've watched ourselves get more self-aware, get more grounded, hopefully get more ideally expanded in who we are, hopefully. And so with all of that, like, communication ideally will be improving. So if it's not, you know, it's really time to get some help with this and with your inner self and your connection to yourself, because all of that does support any other relationship you want to have and your just ability to thrive in life.
Absolutely. And in reference to getting help, so Robyn has two things. One is a special gift for you that's awesome. It's coming up. We'll tell you about that in a second. But you have actually a training coming up. So depending on when you're watching this or listening, it may or may not be happening, but she does it on a regular basis. So if it's not happening now, you can always reach out to her to find out when the next one is. But it's coming up soon. You want to share a little bit about this training?
I would love to. Yeah. So what I have is called the Rock Your Relationship Communication Training. And it's a 7-day training for just about an hour a day. So it's not an all-day thing. And every day it's totally free. And every day I give you a different communication skill to work with. And what I love about it is happens live in my Facebook group. And I do make it available if you can't get into the group. But it is for women only. And the point is that we're learning together, right? And when women learn together, we hold each other's hands and we learn from each other too. So all that's happening. There's and what I give you is an implementable skill. So every day you get a skill. I ask you to implement it that day and then come back for the next one. And they build on each other and you learn, you know, from implementing, and you can ask your questions. So people get just huge value from it and a lot of change in their relationships just from that alone. So that Rock Your Relationship Communication Training is coming up. Should I say the date now?
You're welcome to, and the
Okay.
link will be in the show notes, so you don't have
Yes.
to worry about finding the link. But yeah, sure, you can tell them.
Yeah. So the current one is coming up September 12th. And that's.
And we are in 2022 for those of you that are listening in
2022.
2025.
If we're still around. Yeah. So, yep. So that starts then. And then the other thing that you can get whenever, but no guarantees, so get it now, is my checklist, and it's called the Ultimate Communication Checklist.
And I'm just going to interrupt you right now. I just saw her checklist, and when I tell you it's a must. This is not just some. I mean, it's like really you really put so much effort into this, and there's so much wisdom. So keep going.
Thank you for that, Junie. Yeah.
Sure.
It's meaty, you know, it's 10,
meaty.
it's 10 skills. And the idea of this checklist is how to have difficult conversations without arguing and misunderstandings. So you're going to get some, things to check off to see if you're doing that. And you'll also see what the gaps are that you're not doing. And those are the things, of course, you're going to want to focus on. So you're going to get some things to focus on to fill the gaps for yourself. And then, next level would be take it further with the communication training that I just mentioned, the 7-day training. But definitely get that checklist. It is, it is time.
It's gold.
It's gold. There's a phrase I can't find right now, but yeah, it stands the test of time. How about that?
Absolutely. And it will be also in the show notes.
Yeah.
Any last words for a woman who is dating and meeting someone for the first time when it comes to communication?
I love it. Great question. Authenticity, if you want to really be met with who you are, you have to show up as who you are. And then that's how you get met in that place. So that would be my suggestion is speak to who you are, speak of your truths. And that might include the full range of your life experience, your emotions, maybe not all on the first date, but but that you share that so people
Beautiful.
can relate. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's another theme we're always talking about is be you, be authentic. Put down those masks, because if you're putting on a facade and they're putting on a facade, that's why 6 months into a relationship, you're like, oh my God, who the heck are you?
Yeah, you can't keep that up forever. Yeah.
Right. And it's exhausting. And that's why we want to keep doing this
Exactly.
work so that we really can be ourselves. And that's what creates deep connection. Not all this make believe, I'm going to make believe I'm all put together when, ouch, I need to share something with you. So communication, yes, rock your relationship and communication. Beautiful. Robyn, you're doing such amazing work in the world, and I'm so glad we were able to share you on this platform.
Thank you, Miss Junie Moon. So great to be with you.
You're so welcome. All right, Soul Sister, that's our episode for today. I know you got a lot out of it. As always, I want to encourage you, if you haven't liked it, please like it, subscribe to the station. That's how we reach more Soul Sisters. And if you got some value out of this, and I'm sure you did, please share it with at least one person that can really get a lot from this. And until we meet again, mwah!